Hello, and welcome to What Successful Government Contractors Know About Marketing to the Federal Government, Dispelling Myths. My name is Shirley Collier. I'm the president of Scale to Market. I'm a serial technology entrepreneur, speaker, author, and business growth consultant specializing in federal business development. My colleague and co-presenter today is Noah Burke, co-founder of OBO Agency. Noah is the big thinker, innovator, experienced strategist, and guy behind the magic.
Hi, Shirley. Thanks for having me here today.
We are broadcasting from the greater Washington, D.C. area and welcome all of our listeners from around the country. This is a live webinar. We will mute the attendees so that background noises will be kept to a minimum. Because we have people attending this as both a live webinar and is being recorded for availability on demand, we ask that you send your questions in by email. Please send them to questions@scaletomarket.com. We will be distributing a link to our slides and to the recording after we finish the live webinar. So our agenda today, we will be examining today's topic from two perspectives. I will represent the BD management perspective, and Noah will represent the marketing subject matter expert perspective. I will first give you the context for our discussions today, describe how to stand out in a competitive bidding situation, discuss how federal decision makers view vendor marketing, and the role of marketing in shaping upcoming solicitations. Noah will then describe best practices in marketing to federal decision makers and answer questions he gets a lot about how much it costs and what are the mistakes to avoid. We hope to have a few minutes at the end to address your questions. So again, please email them to questions@scaletomarket.com. So let's get started. Today's webinar is one of a series of programs that bring together the federal marketplace's best minds in business development, marketing, law, accounting, finance, data analytics, human resources, and a number of other professions to share insights and inspiration. These webinars are brief and content-rich. They're focused on what you need to know and do to grow your business. Growth Masters also refers to you, federal contracting CEOs, and your executive teams who are focused on profitable growth. So we're beginning our discussion with the basics. How do you stand out in a competitive bidding process? So what are some of the myths? The first myth is that there's a level playing field in federal procurements. Some people assume that all bidders to a particular solicitation have an equal chance of being selected. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. Federal decision makers are constantly seeking vendor and product information prior to and during the evaluation process. Their assessment is made on an accumulation of information gathered over a long period of time, not just when they're reviewing your proposal. So if your company is not playing the right game on an ongoing basis, your chances of being selected for a procurement are very slim. So just responding to public solicitations like on FBO gives you at best a 10% win rate, because you're competing against companies that have been educating and developing relationships with the decision makers for months, and in some cases, years. Your goal should be a 40% win rate, which means you submit 10 proposals and you win 4. Another myth is the definition of differentiators. And this is really an area of misunderstanding, especially among smaller businesses, of what a differentiator really is. Sometimes businesses think that a differentiator is that we do a good job, or we meet the requirements of the solicitation, like having industry certifications. Everybody does a good job, and all companies serious about working in the federal marketplace have obtained the basic industry, technical, or quality certifications like ISO or CMMI. Those are not differentiators, not anymore. A differentiator is what truly sets you apart from the competition, something that is hard to replicate by others and has perceived value by the client. So an IT company that also runs a frozen yogurt shop might be a differentiator, but that has no value to the client, for example. The third area to help you stand out in a competitive bidding process is thought leadership. This area of being a subject matter expert is very important, whether you're selling a product or a service. Government employees are not thought leaders or subject matter experts, generally. And this is not a criticism of them. Their jobs are narrow and contained within the walls of government. They have a very important job to do, but they rely on outside experts like you. They rely on them a lot. So positioning your company as a go-to resource for specific matters is important. And Noah's going to be talking about how this is done. So the last area of common myths is thinking that developing a relationship with one person in the government is enough to win and keep federal contracts. The U.S. federal government is one of the largest, most regulated bureaucracies in the world. It spends $500 billion in discretionary funds on everything imaginable. And those are public funds. They're yours and mine. And there are layers and layers of oversight and accountability to ensure that those funds are spent appropriately. What this means from a marketing perspective is that you need different messages for different individuals, agencies, and procurements. So understanding the roles and perspectives of these decision makers and influencers and the culture of specific agencies is critical for long-term success in the federal marketplace. Now, this graphic, I know that it's not very easy to see. It was recently published by Contract Management magazine, and I think it was the November issue and is on their website, Contract Management. But it captures the scope and breadth of individuals involved in a single federal procurement. It is estimated that for a typical $1 million contract, there are about 92 federal employees involved in some manner. And this excludes federal employees who oversee the actual delivery of the products and services. And on the contractor side, there can be up to 25 people that are involved in proposing and contracting that $1 million procurement. And this also excludes the staff that's going to be responsible for delivery of the product or service. So it's important to understand how federal decision makers view vendor marketing, and it has changed over the last decade. First is that they are required to conduct market research prior to the solicitation. Office of Management and Budget requires agencies to conduct market research on all solicitations over $3,000. Federal decision makers want to be educated and sold to before solicitation is made public. Small business outreach sessions that are sponsored by agencies consistently give out the message, please bug me. In fact, I attended one a couple of weeks ago that the Air Force had, and there was a lieutenant colonel that got up there, and that was his message to the small businesses in the room. Please bug me. Tell me about your products and services. I am very interested and it helps me. So don't think that because of my position that I'm hard to reach. Well, I am hard to reach, he said, but keep trying. The second thing that has changed is that they're looking for commercial solutions and innovations. They must determine, first of all, is there a commercial solution available in the marketplace before hiring someone to develop a custom solution. And I have to say, we've seen this year more emphasis in this from the Trump administration. So we're going to see more emphasis, I think, over the next couple of years. And the federal buyers are being pressured to find innovations that will allow them to do more with less. They're also risk averse. If you are the incumbent in a contract, that's good news. Studies show that incumbents win recompetes 60 to 80% of the time. People do business with people they know, even in the federal government. However, if you're not the incumbent, you have an opportunity to propose innovation. Rarely does innovation come from incumbent contractors. It's easy to be complacent when you have a risk-averse customer. So I'm not being overly critical here of the contractors. Sometimes contracts are structured to not allow innovation. Federal law also mandates that a certain percentage of small business set-aside contracts be awarded to small businesses with certain socioeconomic certifications, which many of you are probably familiar with. These certifications are 8A, HUBZone, Women-Owned Small Business, and Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Businesses. It's important that you understand if your target agencies are meeting their goals, and this is public information. It's nearly impossible for a contracting officer to take a set-aside away from one of these groups. Learn how to play that game, even if you don't have one of the certifications. New SBA rules are more generous for companies that mentor socioeconomic certified companies, allowing now the mentor to perform 60% of the set-aside contract. Knowing these roles and helping agencies to meet their set-aside goals will be welcomed. And one last point, what they can't do. Government employees cannot give vendor-specific pricing information to you or share other materials that are marked proprietary or confidential. They can't give you quote-unquote inside information that's not being shared with all potential bidders. However, they can share a lot of information about existing contracts, including the award amount, the period of performance, the statement of work, and the number of people that are currently working on that contract. So some of the tools that are used by the government, so the Office of Management and Budget, which I mentioned earlier, has issued myth-busting memos over the last couple of years to government employees to clarify what they can do and have encouraged them to interact with industry prior to issuing solicitations. So some contractors feel that because it's a public bidding process, that they're not even allowed to meet with the program or contracting personnel. The government has stated, however, that interacting with industry reduces costs, improves quality, and reduces procurement errors and misunderstandings during the solicitation phase. Federal decision makers use requests for information, sources sought notifications, draft solicitations, and other means, such as conducting phone interviews, to gather ideas and suggestions that shape upcoming procurements. All of these instruments provide opportunities for vendors to introduce themselves, educate federal decision makers and influencers, and help shape upcoming solicitations. So the marketing function in a government contracting organization is mission critical. It supports business development by creating awareness of the company and its differentiators prior to solicitations hitting the streets, and it helps to open doors for the sales team. Market research helps to narrow the business development focus to specific agencies and opportunities and increases contract win probabilities. So that helps you get to your 40% win rate. The marketing function also supports the delivery of products and services by gathering market, decision maker, requirements, and other intelligence that significantly enhances the knowledge of the client and the assignment to be done even before the project kicks off. So Noah, now that we know some of the nuances and challenges and opportunities that marketing to the federal government has, perhaps you can discuss some of the specific best marketing practices of successful government contractors.
Absolutely, and that was wonderful, Charlie. Thank you so much for sharing that great information. So any business out there, you got to start engaging with decision makers and influencers on their own terms. And what that means, to Shirley's point, is rather than sitting behind the scenes and waiting for them to contact you, or rather than just sitting there and hoping that you'll be part of the process, instead you can actually go out and reach out to them, position yourself as a thought leader in front of that agency or in front of that particular individual. So engaging people on their own terms could mean everything from presenting daily information through social media, It could mean LinkedIn. It could mean emails. There's very many forms it can take. It's all about building relationships with these particular individuals. So if they don't know about you, you're not really building any relationships with them. If you meet them at a particular conference or event, or if you meet them throughout your course of doing business, it's a great idea to make sure that you're connected with them, that you're sharing information with them, that you're re-sharing articles that you come across. And what all this is going to do is going to help you stay in the forefront of the agency's mind. And last but not least, people like to be don't like to be sold, they like to buy. So if they feel that you guys have the perfect product or solution for them based upon all the information you've seen over the years, whether it was from the newsletter, whether it was from the email they received, whether it was from a direct mail piece or some social media article that you posted, they're not going to feel like they're not being sold to. They're going to feel like they're actually purchasing from you on their own terms. And so another big key here, another big key takeaway is really creating personal relationships by knowing what makes these people tick and communicating them in such a way that they'll feel confident that by the time they're ready to move forward, you're the right organization for them. So there's a lot of strategies this can take in the end. And some of them you guys are probably already familiar with. I break them down into really three separate areas. We have inbound marketing, which is your honeypot marketing. We have outbound marketing, which is your interruption marketing. And last but not least, we really have what we refer to as federal marketing best practices, which is a combination of inbound marketing and outbound marketing tactics. So some of you may be familiar with this because just like in B2G, this stuff also works in B2B. And so from an inbound marketing perspective, think about SEM or SEO. If you're producing content related to the solutions or services that you are most interested in selling to the federal government, and when these individuals do their research prior to actually picking the organization they want to do business with, you can be front and center. So do not discount SEM or SEO, just like do not discount pay-per-click marketing or display advertising. Nowadays, what you can do, especially in display advertising, is you're actually able to go ahead and directly market to the people that you want to market to. I'll get into LinkedIn a little bit later down the road, but LinkedIn, you can actually pick everyone from a particular organization or agency that you're trying to target and make sure that your ad only appears in front of them. Again, this is visibility, this is seen, but really what you're doing is not just the ad appearing in front of them, but you want to share content, you want to share information, you want to make it so that these individuals are more knowledgeable than they were the day before they saw your sponsored post, your sponsored marketing content. And again, this goes to content marketing. So are you producing content that these individuals are going to want to read about prior to selecting the winning bid or prior to selecting the organization? So content can take many forms. That can take blog content, where you're writing blogs about either A, the process, or B, the challenge, or C, some sort of solution that you guys have. And again, they're going to be using this information to evaluate your business. Also, events and sponsorships. Get out there, get face-to-face, because that face-to-face relationship is gold. As Shirley said earlier, they want to do business with people they know. So again, events and sponsorships go a really long way. And social media is kind of a broad term. In some social media is paid social media, which I gave an example earlier with LinkedIn. But also social media just to stay front and center. So that means Twitter, that means LinkedIn and Facebook. You may say, well, how are these people on LinkedIn and Facebook? Well, they are, and I'll show you in a minute. So those are some inbound stuff you can do where they're going to discover you and then come to your website and to read more about what you have to offer. But let's not discount outbound marketing. So sending cold emails to introduce yourself, to find out what challenges they have. Beat these agencies to the punch in terms of what their needs are going to be. Direct mail, let them know about, let's say, an upcoming webinar you have or an upcoming event that you're sponsoring, relevant information that may be really valuable to them. Likewise, with a newsletter, maybe 5 useful tips that you send out to these individuals on a monthly basis about what they should know, which may help them gear the RFP. Also looking at thinking about teleprospecting and LinkedIn messages. As Shirley said earlier, bug me, the Lieutenant Colonel was saying. So, don't discount picking up the phone and calling and actually emailing and sending a message, because these guys are actually on LinkedIn. So really what it's all about is about a combination of tactics. It's about how do we create a combination of tactics that doesn't seem overbearing, but seems highly personalized. And so with federal marketing best practices, you don't just want to send out a mass email touting your solutions and services and hoping they're going to get in front of you or hoping you're going to get a conversation. Instead, you want to have a tailored message to each and every one of your target audiences that's highly personalized about something that's relevant for them. And this doesn't mean having to be selling them anything. This just simply means, hey, I just wanted to share this article I came across that I think you could really benefit from. That's it, nothing more. All you have to do is stay in front of these individuals to start building that relationship and using a combination of tactics, both inbound and outbound, to stay front and center. So I know one thing that I'm sure a lot of you have questions about is LinkedIn. And with LinkedIn, many of you may say, well, geez, the people I'm targeting aren't on LinkedIn. These are all, federal government employees. That is not the truth. 80% of social media leads actually in the B2B and B2G space come from LinkedIn. 92% of the marketers out there and salespeople out there are using LinkedIn to find their ideal prospects and their customers. If you're not doing it, you're missing out. And 46% of all social media traffic to your company site comes from LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a holy grail that I can assure you that most of your competitors are not using right now because there's a myth around it that only B2B uses LinkedIn. So we did a little quick research online. Over 10,000 employees are part of the Department of Health and Human Services are on LinkedIn. 28,000 are from the Department of State. 32,000 from the Department of Homeland Security. We can go on and on and on. All of these people, all of your customers on LinkedIn, they are reading, they're going through their newsfeed, they're looking at this information, they're responding to messages. The only really difficult people to get through on a LinkedIn message would be like a CEO at a high-level company who's getting 1,000 of these. But a lot of the people that you're targeting, I can guarantee you, they're not getting a LinkedIn message. Their people are not connected to your competitors. They're not seeing all the great content you can share. So let's not confuse LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an excellent resource when it comes to social media marketing. So one of the things that I want to talk about here are really strategies to succeed. And before I get kind of further here, I wanted Shirley to kind of talk about, adapting your message for each agency and opportunity, and I'll take it on more on the investing on the paid media side.
Yeah, thanks, Noah. So your message, which typically when you have your first meeting with someone in the federal government, you're introducing your company for the first time, they will ask you for a capability statement. It's very important that in that capability statement, you reiterate the goals of the agency or the opportunity that you're seeking, so the specific solicitation that's coming up. And it has to be customized. That's the biggest complaint that I hear from federal decision makers is that these small businesses especially will come into their office with a generic capability statement. They haven't taken time to learn about the mission of the agency or to tie the company's capabilities to the upcoming solicitation. So it's important to clearly articulate your differentiators. And we talked about this a little bit earlier about what constitutes a differentiator. It could be your branded quality program. So beyond industry certifications, what have you done internally that is unique to ensure quality? Any kind of intellectual property that you may have? Any kind of unique expertise or awards that you or your company has received need to be in your capability statement. The other thing is to validate with metrics. I see capability statements, they have a lot of adjectives in there. We're great, we're wonderful. Well, everybody can say that, but validating how fabulous you are is important. So the number of transactions that you have had, for example, if you are a call center, the number of calls that you handle on a daily basis. If you're a web developer, how many web pages you've developed over the last 5 years, money you've saved the government, your turnover rate, your CPARS rating. and your past performance, meaning specific contracts, the period of performance, and then the impact or the outcomes of those previous contracts need to be on your capability statement. And use government lingo, not industry lingo. I find this is something hard for people to, especially if they do work in the commercial sector, is to understand that the government maybe does the same thing, but they have different terminology and different jargon that they use. The way to speak their language is to look at previous solicitations, statements of work, and contracts for that work, and you'll see their language. So pull their language out of those solicitations and put them in your capability statement, and that's how you win friends and influence people.
I like that. Dale Carnegie, every day. So one of the things is, as federal buyers, there's a lot of systems they're going to use to filter vendors. And again, you're going to have to stand out to be front and center. You know, they're going to go to the, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, SAM registration, the SBA profile on your website. But you need to do more than just that these days. You need to complement these systems. So some of the stuff you can do is invest in paid media. So what I mean by paid media, that comes back to if there's particular keywords, if there's particular something that they're investigating, maybe you want to bid on some pay-per-click ads around those keywords. Invest in LinkedIn sponsored content, invest in Facebook, invest in sponsorships on particular government, let's call it blogs or government magazines that you can invest in. Again, this starts building some of your visibility. But something really cool that you can do is you can create specialized microsites for your target agency. So let's say you're working on a particular project, you're trying to win a competitive bid. And you know there's a lot of information that you want to be able to share with everyone, but that information can sometimes get lost and just simply the overloaded amount of information these individuals are receiving. So what you can do is you can create a specialized microsite where all that information is housed. So, and you can provide them a link to it. And not only can you provide all that information on one site where they can download anything they need to download, learn about the company, whatever the case may be, but also for your standpoint, you can see if they're interacting with that information. You can start seeing, well, how many people are visiting this microsite that you sent over? You can start seeing, what are they reading? What are they interested in? All of a sudden, you may be able to start saying, do we need to head this off before we're about to lose it? Or does it look like we're about to win it, and why? So just simply based upon the information that they're reading. Attend and speak at agency events. I mean, heck, there's no better way to become a thought leader than actually a speaker. Set up automated triggers and sales notifications. So that goes back to the concept of the microsite. Are they reading about it? Are they reading information that you're sharing? But also on LinkedIn, something really cool you can do, especially if you have a LinkedIn Sales Navigator, you can add all your accounts and contacts to your LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and you can see if there's any sort of news that's being shared by these individuals. Is there anything they're liking? Is there anything they're talking about? And use that as indicators to find out, is there a better way to communicate with them, or is some sort of message you can send them that would relate to exactly what that person was talking about. And again, a lot of people find this interesting. It's a great way to build a relationship, which leads to my next point. Bottom line, be more personal. If you're able to find opportunities to connect with this individual based upon what they like, based upon what they share, or based upon what they're looking at, you're going to have a much more high likelihood of converting or at least building that relationship, so it's going to help you obviously win in the end. So again, it's nice to know who's looking at you, and it's even more importantly to be personal with your communication. So there's a lot of mistakes you actually kind of avoid. A lot of people want to start implementing a lot of these best practices right away, but by doing so, they end up abandoning all other models to launch these strategies. And I've seen this happen time and time again to companies, and they can't understand what's happening. So what I generally tell companies is start implementing the strategies that are recommended, but don't necessarily abandon all other models to simply implement the new stuff. You don't want to see a big drop off. The second thing is, a lot of what I'm talking about here is having technology in place. You know, our preferred system that we generally recommend to clients is HubSpot. It's not the only system out there. We have clients using Salesforce, clients using Pardot. We have clients using ActiveCampaign, Marketo, you name it. But you need a system to start measuring the results of your content, people reading it or are they not reading it? You need to start measuring your activity. How much communication are you having? But without measuring any of this, you have no idea if what you're producing makes any sense to your greater audience or if it's having any impact upon your deal flows. Not communicating concepts to your business development team and delivery team. You can start doing all this work, but if no one has any idea what you're doing, the right hand won't know what the left hand is doing, you're not going to get very far. So it's making sure that everyone in the organization understands how you're approaching this and what you're trying to accomplish. Also, part of the strategy revolves around identifying all your top targets. For example, that lieutenant colonel, maybe that's one of your top targets that you want to be going after. Do you have their email address? Do you have their phone number? Are you connected with them on LinkedIn? Do you have that individual? Do you have a list of all those people who you're going to want to be targeting in the end? A lot of people simply don't. If you don't have it, there's no newsletter to be sent out. There's no email to be sent out. There's no communication that's going to happen. So identifying your top targets is always key. One of the areas here is not producing content that aligns with the agency culture. So it's important to know who you're selling to. It's important to know what type of content or information they're most interested in learning about. Here's a simple trick. Ask them what questions they have. A common philosophy is they ask, you answer. So when you're out there meeting with these individuals and they start saying, well, I'm curious about this, this, and this, or I have these questions about this, this, and this, assume that they're not the only one at the agency who has that particular question. Assume that everyone there has that particular question. You want to start producing content around that answer that would be able to not only help that individual who asked that question, but also everyone else there who has a similar one. Not having an outreach strategy to promote content. Great, you're producing all these blogs. Who's reading them? How are they discovering them? How are they finding them? Are you sharing it with your salespeople so that your salespeople and business development people can be able to share it with their target audience? Are you sharing it on LinkedIn? How are you sharing on LinkedIn? Are you sponsoring on LinkedIn? Are you adding it to your newsletter? Are you sending it as a direct mail piece? Maybe you decide to print it out because you have 10 different blogs that turn into a great article, or even more importantly, a great little booklet that you can be able to send to people. These are little things you got to think about. What's your strategy to actually promote that content to who you're targeting? And then last but not least is thinking results will happen overnight. It's simply not going to be the case. This is a long-term play, producing content, sharing information, and getting the word out there. So again, one thing that you do not want to do is say, great, I'm all of a sudden going to have 1,001 opportunities because I started this Monday and by Tuesday I will have won every single contract out there and I will be victorious. That is not going to be how it happens, but you will hopefully be able to help influence the decision making by implementing these strategies and techniques. So at this point in time, we're going to go to questions that we have received. And we actually have already had a couple of questions. And Shirley, do you want to, I guess, go to one of the questions you've already received so far?
Yep. So the first question is, how many marketing personnel should a small federal contractor have? So typically what we see is 1 to 3 people in marketing, and they're primarily focused on market intelligence and updating content. Typically, they will outsource some of the higher level expertise to companies like Noah's, for example.
Thank you for the plug.
And to kind of fill in the gaps, the skill gaps of the staff, of their internal staff.
Awesome, awesome. Another question we have here is, does moving to this type of marketing strategy cost a lot of money? The money that you're going to be investing into moving to more of a content-driven marketing approach is mostly going to be around the cost to produce the content, whether you do it yourself or you hire someone to do it. There's always a cost of producing it. The cost of advertising, whether it's sponsored content on LinkedIn or whether or not it may be some pay-per-click ads around certain keywords or terms that you really want to be relevant for. And then you also have the cost of actually just kind of the distribution side behind the content itself. You're actually not going to be spending a lot of money because there's generally not 1,001 people that you're trying to target in front of. There's generally a very few select individuals. So, you know, I generally tell clients, anticipate total all-in budget somewhere around $3 to $5K a month in terms of both ad spend, content production, to really be considering that as your overall cost, as well as someone to help manage your social media side of the business as well. So yes, it does cost money to do this, but your sales and business development people will love you, because as they get all these questions, you're going to be answering them through content, which is going to make their lives a lot easier getting these deals won. Another question we have here is, how do you know which accounts to target? And that's a really good question. So luckily in your case, and especially in the B2G side, you generally know exactly what agencies you're targeting and what you're trying to win. So that's generally the easy part. The other kind of more easy part behind this is, it's not necessarily about how do I know which accounts to target, it's how do I know which contacts to target. So it's important to do research. A lot of these people can actually be found on LinkedIn nowadays. 5-10 years ago, that was not the case. It was a B2B place. Now you have all B2G on there as well. So from that particular standpoint, I would say that to know which accounts to target is some of your own research, but also using LinkedIn to go ahead and research to identify these people.
And I would add that if there is a specific solicitation at a specific agency that you are targeting, and you're in the pre-solicitation phase, which means it has not been made public yet, the way to find out who the decision makers are, if they're not on LinkedIn, or you don't even know who to look for on LinkedIn, is to look at a previous solicitation, and it will have the contracting officer's name on it. So that's a good place to start. And then contacting the contracting office, you can usually get program management contact information. Let's see, we have a couple of more questions here. One is, what is the most important information to put in a capability statement? Well, I mentioned earlier about differentiators and your statistics and past performance. But what I didn't mention that I might mention now is that you need to have very prominent on your capability statement your DUNS number, your cage code, and your contract vehicle, the contract vehicles that you have. So regardless of the style or the design that you're using, and I see small businesses making this mistake, they'll put on the back of the front page in very tiny print at the very bottom what their DUNS number and cage code and those sorts of things are. But when you think about your audience, the first thing that the federal decision maker will do when you leave is they're going to turn to their internal systems and look you up. And to look you up, they need a DUNS number or a cage code. And so you want to make their jobs very easy. So put your DUNS number and cage code, your contract vehicles, on the first page, very prominent. There's one last question here. Do I need to attend industry days in person? We are not located in the DC area. You know, I get this question a lot recently because some people think that they can just use social media or email to develop relationships, and there's nothing like meeting someone in person, making eye contact, shaking their hands, making that personal connection, and then you reinforce that relationship with social media. So just because you're not located in the DC area does not mean that you can't be successful, but I do suggest that you fly in and stay a couple of nights in a hotel and meet with the decision makers in DC.
And I would second that by saying there's nothing more valuable than a face-to-face interaction. Shirley, you're absolutely right. Like everything that we're talking about, face-to-face should still be one of your primary methods in terms of building relationships. And here's a little tip. When you meet that person, say, hey, listen, we have these 5 helpful, useful tips that we share with all of our, all the individuals that we meet at these events. Would you like me to include you? As simple as that. And all of a sudden, at that point in time, you can add that person to your newsletter. And each month, they can go ahead and get that. So everyone you talk to, ask that, hey, would it be okay to add you to our 5 tips newsletter? Or would it be okay to add you to our newsletter? And just have them say yes. And guess what? That little action, that little bit of effort you're putting towards that newsletter, the little bit of effort that you just went towards asking that person for permission, because you met them face-to-face, will yield results beyond what you can possibly dream. So I think those are all the questions that we have here today. You know, obviously, Shirley, thank you for letting me be part of this with you today.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And thank you for your incredible insights and your advice today. And I'd like to thank all of you who have tuned in from around the country. Sign up for Growth Masters at no cost for more complimentary, valuable information about growing your federal contracting business. And check out our websites for upcoming webinars, white papers, and other information dealing with specific issues related to government contracting, marketing, and business development matters.
And Shirley, can I ask you one question about Growth Masters? Can you give a little bit insight, kind of more of the stuff they'd be learning there as well as part of the series? I know you talked about it earlier, but just for everyone who...
Yeah, so Growth Masters brings together a number of experts from around the country, and we explore matters from a number of different perspectives. So today the topic is marketing. We also look at software, operations, legal, accounting issues. So it is to help the CEOs that want to grow their business to tap into the best minds in the country regarding federal contracting from a number of professional perspectives.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. I hope you found this information helpful, and look forward to seeing you around.
And don't hesitate to contact us. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.